Okay, we are up to tzadik sofit, which is a bit similar to a regular tzadik. So says the mishnat sofrim, o tzadik pshuta. Again, that's a tzadik sofit, pshuta, in other words, that it doesn't curve on the bottom, it continues down straight. יהיו ראשיה כמו של כפופה, והיינו שהיא מורכבת גם כן מיוד ונון. You see it here, you have the right-hand side, the Ashkenazi version anyway, the right-hand side is like a yud, but the yud is sort of looking upwards, and then you have a nun sofit, which is again like the head is like a zayin, but it descends obviously longer down, like a nun sofit. שהיא מורכבת גם כן מיון ונון, אך מנון פשוטה, in other words, a nun סופית, על כן גופה פשוט כמו אות נון פשוטה, ושיעור אורכה, the length of it, is בכדי שתרד למטה, ממקום דיבוק שני הראשים לכתחילה, בכדי שיהיה ראוי לעשות ציידי כפופה. In other words, you take from the part that the two of them connect, and you make it long enough going down, that in theory, you could also make it into a tzadi kfufa. In other words, that you would, if you were doing the tzadi kfufa, you would continue sort of in a diagonal and then cut back to the left. So when you go down, it has to be approximately the same length. Because again, we say that a pshuta needs to be done like it can be like a kfufa as well. The Sephardi version is also like they have the regular tzaddik, that it has the backwards yud, and the left-hand side, in other words, as opposed to a regular yud, the Sephardi version is a backwards yud, and the left-hand side is more like a long vav rather than a nun. Again, everybody has the three tagim here on top because it's shavnez gitz. Here. So this is the Ashkenazi version. Ktav Ari is more like the Ktav Sfaradim. But here also follows something more similar to the Sfaradi version. Exactly like above either. Okay. They say here, if let's say you would make it like the two sides connecting sort of in the middle, that would also be kasher. Sure. It looks like a tzaddik, rather than one long one and then another thing connected it to the right, which is really more the way it's supposed to be. Okay, let's go on to the letter kuf. Okay, ot kuf yeh gaga shaveh. In other words, the head of the kuf, it's just flat. Okay. הקטן צריך להיות על גגה בצד שמאל על פניה, and you make a little tag here towards the left-hand side. This is, I think, and this is here they quote, it's based on Gemara that says that the tag, the kuf, is sort of facing the reish, and the reish symbolizes the Reshaim, that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is telling them that if they will be closer to Teshuvah, then they will have a crown tied to them. ובספר מעשה רוקח כתב מטעם זה, יעתיק התג מקצה הגג. In other words, the problem here is as follows. If I were to make the tag at the end of the roof all the way to the left, and I make this tag a little too big, it could end up looking like a lamed. Right? You see how it could form the shape of a lamed. So that's why he says to make the tag not at the end, but a little bit earlier. Okay, we'll see the Sfaradim do it differently. But that's what the mishnat sofrim says. The ימנית צריכה להיות כפוף היטב לצד רגל שמאל, כמו צורת כף כפופה. In other words, the right-hand part on the bottom needs to, it can't just go straight like this. It needs to bend back inside to the left like a kaf kfufa, like a regular kaf. Again, it's not going to go all the way through like a regular kaf, because you need to leave space for the leg of the kuf, but it should bend here like a kaf. Okay? שתהיה מושבה קצרה הרבה מן הגג. Right, but after it bends on the bottom part, it needs to be much shorter than the roof. Why? Because you need to leave space for the left leg of the kuf. ורגל השמאלית תלויה בה, והיא כצורת נון פשטה, אך קצרה מעט. ועל כן תהיה ראשה אב ומתמעט עוביה והולך כמו בנון. So, the left leg of the kuf should be like a nun pshuta, in other words, a nun sofit, which is thick on the top and then becomes thinner as you go on. Now, the way we do it really like a nun pshuta, which is really like a zayin. In other words, somewhere in between a zayin and a nun pshuta, with the square on top and then the thing in the middle. From the Mishnah Bua, it seems that it doesn't really have to be like that. It's enough that it's thicker on top and then becomes thinner as you go on. יש לכתחילה למשוך רגל שמאל התלויה באלכסון קצת לצד ימין. Okay, in other words, it shouldn't just go straight down. It should go a little bit diagonal like this. You see here, it's going a little bit of a diagonal towards the right as it's descending. מאוד ייזהר שלא ייגע הגג להגג או לערכו שבצידו, right? Because the Gemara says that the leg of the kuf is tluya, in other words, it's hanging. So it shouldn't be touching here to the right, it shouldn't be touching on top, it shouldn't be touching anything. It should be just separate like this. ולא יהיה הרגל נגד אמצע הגג. Right, when you do the leg of the kuf, it should be going down from the end of the roof of the kuf and not from the middle of the roof of the kuf. If you remember, we had this discussion already by the letter Hey, that we said the left leg of the Hey should be should be directly below the end of the roof of the Hey, and not the middle, here too as well. אם נגע הרגל בגגו והוא הדין בירכו שבצידו, או שעשה הרגל באמצע הגג, הכל דינו כמו באות ה' ומבואר שם ליל. So it all has the same הלכות as the left Hey. So what is the הלכות there? שאם הרגל השמאלי נוגע בגוף האות פסולה, in other words, if it's touching, then it's possible. And then obviously I'll need to correct, or where I can, if I continue writing, I won't even be able to correct. ואם תלה את הרגל כנגד אמצע הגג, צריך לגוררה או לכותבה מחדש, ואם כבר כתב אותיות שחרה, יגרור חלק הגג הבולט משמאל הרגל, ואם אי אפשר כאשר גם בלי תיקון. However, this one, in other words, that I made the leg towards the middle of the roof, even though lechatchila it should be fixed, b'di'evet it's not pasul. So in the Sefer Torah, I can just erase it and rewrite it at the end. In Filul Mezuzot, my options are either, and I've written further, my options are either to erase a little bit of the roof here, so that it will end up directly above, or to just leave it as is. אם אורך הרגל השמאלי הוא רק כמו יוד מכנגד מקום הכפיפה ולמטה, כאשר בדיעבד. In other words, here, this is this case, where I didn't make the leg of the kuf long enough, I made it go beyond the lower part of the right-hand side of the kuf. It went down below that, just the size of a yud, so that's the most minimum amount that it can go down, and that is kasher b'diavad. He says, כן נראה לי פרי מגדים, ומה שנשאר מסיים, okay. Right. So there's a bi'ur halacha here. Let's see here. Yeah. There's a bi'ur halacha here that discusses on the right-hand side of the kuf, what happens if it's not curved so much. Okay, so let's see that. As here as follows. It's not so clear because they don't quote the full words. All right, let's go to the full text version. It says as follows, "Ve'ircha yemanit v'chulei kaf kufa," like this, and he says, "U'bediavad nired afilu kafuf me'at dai." In other words, here you see it on. Can you see it here on the picture in number 2 here? In other words, even if the bottom part of the right hand side of the kuf, it doesn't fully curve to the left like a kaf sofit, but it just curves a little bit, then b'diavad that's also kasher. He says, "Ayin beit Yosef." וכן משמע דעת רש"י בשבת, וכן משמע ברבינו ירוחם שכתבו שיערוך רגל הקוף שלא ידמה להי. In other words, the reason why we do this, in other words, why do we curve the bottom of the kuf to the left, of the right-hand side of the kuf to the left, is to differentiate it from a hay, because a kuf could end up looking like a hay. וכל זה משמע פתוח למטה, ועל כל פנים כפוף מהדי. ועיין בספר בית אהרון שבי בשם הרדואל, שעיקר צורתה ריש נון, והעריך שם בעניין זה, וסיים בזה הלשון, ונראה שצורתו כמו ריש. In other words, he says that really the right-hand side of the kuf is not like a kaf, it's more like a ריש, רק שתהיה הקצה של ריש עקום לשמאל כמו למד. In other words, it should be more diagonal to the left like a למד. לכן נראה מספר מגן דוד. ולצאת ידי הכל יעשה למטה כפוף כאין כף, וכן נהגו. He says it's better to make it curved to the left, לא כמקצת סופרים, שעושים צורתה כמו עיקום של למד, that they make it like a למד going diagonally straight, all the way from the top, וזה כלא כאחד וקוצת בנטיות, רק כמו שכתבנו. In other words, it sort of needs to more either curve, or to sort of come down and then take the diagonal, which is actually what more the Sfaradim do. Let's see the Sephardi version. See here, several differences between the Sfaradim and the Ashkenazi. First of all, on top, they have here a tag at the end of the roof, not like the Ashkenazim that do the tag a little bit before the end of the roof. They make it at the end. And then they have another tag here a bit before that. This is what the Sfaradim called, they have 6 dagim called Badat Chaya. In other words, on those 6 letters, Dalit Kuf Chet Yud Hey. So this is the additional tag on the letter Kuf. You see here, it doesn't really curve like a kaf. It sort of just comes down and then takes a diagonal to the left. And another difference between the Sfaradim and the Ashkenazim again have it like a zayin, which is thicker on top and then becomes thinner as you go down. The Sfaradim just have it like a simpler line going down from top to the bottom. Let's say you started the kaf, it should start from the middle of the air here, close to the top. If you started it lower down, like they have here in this picture, then it's also kasher. If you made it completely outside, not below the roof, then it's pasul. Also, the Sfaradim, they just have it straight down, rather than the Ashkenazim, that when it comes down, it goes a little bit the diagonal to the right. Do their shticks here. Comments on the kuf. Go to the reish. Okay. Ot reish. They didn't put any picture of the reish. Ot reish gaga shaveh. In other words, the roof is flat. ולכתחילה, ומאוד ייזהר שתהיה עגולה ממש מאחוריה, כדי שלא תדמה לדלת. ואם נראית כדלת, פסולה. In other words, the difference between the dalet and the reish, that the reish on the upper right-hand corner is curved, and the dalet is squared at the upper right-hand corner. And again, we make the dalit, we also give it in a kev. We give it like something going even beyond. But the main difference between the resh and the dalit is whether in the upper right-hand corner it's curved or square. Again, the resh is curved, the dalit is square. וירחה יהיה קצר יותר מגגה לכתחילה, וגגה ארוך כאורך ב', כדי שלא תדמה לבב. In other words, I need to make the roof of the resh longer than the leg of the resh, the right leg of the resh. Why? So that I don't want to end it up looking like a vav. I don't want to end it up looking like a yud. So the way I prevent that is by making the roof sort of clearly longer than the leg, and that's what prevents it from ending up looking like a vav or like a yud. But I can't make the leg of the resh too short. Why? Because then it also will end up looking yud. However, he says, in other words, even if I made the leg of the resh very short like a yud, that if, there it says that if a tino cannot recognize what letter it is, and there's also a suffix whether it's kosher or not. In other words, not a case where a tino thinks it's a different letter, but rather that he can't even identify the letter. Let's see in the other pictures. Quite similar. The Ashkenazi make the roof of it a little bit longer than the Sfaradim. It's nice in the picture that you sent for Joach, they sort of have these squares which sort of measure for you the distances. So you see here the top is 3 kulmusim and the bottom is 2. See in the Sfaradim, it's both 2 and 2. It's the same size, the roof and the leg. Bad also have it a bit going diagonal rather than straight down. Okay, let's go into shin, a more complicated letter. So the shin is, yeah.
Sorry, just can I ask, in the Beit Din in London, you have a Sephardi sofer?
Regular sofer is Ashkenazi. Yeah, I mean, we've used Sephardi sofer when he hasn't been available, but
it's very funny. In Germany, we're using a Sephardi sofer, but he's really outstanding. Now, he always tells me of when in the Gimel when I have to of how the Gimel and the Dalet has to be always a little bit diagonal towards the right, the feet, never really just straight down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. But in the Sephardi,
yeah, I never really had any other, and that never. I had to learn the proper otiot for my name, so but I learned from a Sephardi sofer.
So you when you sign your name, you do it like a Sephardi signing?
Yeah, a little bit, somewhere in between.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the sofer we're used to using is Ashkenazi. We do have a Sephardi sofer in backup in case he's not available, but he's been doing Gittin for a while, so there's an advantage to that, knowing all the details of a get. Did have an interesting get last week that we were sending to an Ashkenazi Beit Din, a get shlichut. So not exactly on the letter so much that we didn't have an issue, but all the differences between Sephardi and Ashkenazi get, we had to make sure that we were doing like the makom hanetina, right? Because the get, the ikar is the makom hanetina, the place that is giving the get to the woman. So I think we did almost everything, except for one thing that I guess Pashut says you don't do like the Makom Anatina, but everything else we were doing like the Makom Anatina. But it took us a while to figure out all the changes that we had to make.
Fascinating.
Yeah, nice. A good Chazara on the.
Yep. Very good. Sorry for the
Yeah. Okay. Shin. So Shin has the three heads, right? As we know. So says here in the mishnat sofrim, ראשה הראשון הימני, אם ירח הנמשך ממנו, הוא כאין וו ופניה כלפי מעלה קצת. So the first shin is like a vav, but it's not a vav that's obviously going straight down, but it's more of a vav facing upwards. והראש השני יהיה כאין יוד, ופניה גם כן קצת כלפי מעלה. The second head is like a yud, which is shorter than the first one, also sort of looking upwards a bit, in other words, slanted a bit towards upwards. The okitz katan alea lechatchila, and it also has the okitz, what we call the kutzov shel yud, at least according to one interpretation. Then it has that. That's the middle one. וכן כל אותיות שהכנס גץ, ראשם השמאלי הוא כמו זין, שלקחת, let me just see here if there's some words missing. Don't know with this edition, skipping words. This one. Yeah, there's a problem here in the order. Okay, it should be read like this. והראש השלישי צריך לעשות כתמונת זין ושלושה תגין עליה. And the left one, that you make like a zayin with three tagim on top, וכן כל אותיות שהכנס גץ ראשם השמאלי הוא כמו זין. Okay, so let's go back to the mishnat sofrim, the one with the Oz Hadar edition. So he says, הראש השמאלי, yeah, here it's missing some words. That the left one should be like a zayin, so that you see it's not like a vav or a yud, but rather that it's coming down from the side, but rather it's coming down from the middle, and it extends to both sides, and it has the three tagim on top. And then that he says, and that's the same. So all of the letters, Shatnez, Shin, Ayin, Tet, Nun, and Zayin have this head to the left of it, which has the three tagim on top. In other words, each one of the heads of the shin cannot touch each other, and we'll see later on the machloket what happens if they do. הראש השמאלי הזה יהיה לכתחילה ירחו ממש בעמידה. In other words, it should go down straight. In other words, not diagonal. וימשיך אליו הירך מן הראש הראשון בשיפוע למטה עד מקום חודו. So then you draw then, you first start with this, let's say, you make it go straight down. And then you make the most right hand vav, and you connect it at its bottom point here. Okay. ערך הראש השני גם כן ימשיך בשיפוע לצד שמאל למטה עד שיהיו שלושה ראשים מחוברים למטה במקום אחד. And then you connect this one here, so they're all connected in the same spot. כקוף וריש, שגם כן עומדות רק על רגל אחת. ובדיעבד, אם עשה מושב השין רחב, נשאר הפרי מגדים בצריך עיון, is that considered a shinui tsura? In other words, if I were to make a shin, like often people draw a shin, in other words, the shin should just be standing on this one point here at the left. In other words, it all connects to that point. If you make sort of like an entire floor to the shin, like in this picture, then the Pri Megadim has a safek whether that's a shinui tsura, because it's mashma from the Gemara. Gemara says sheker en lo raglayim, right? That those letters of shin, kuf, and reish, they don't have any feet to stand on. They're all sort of one-legged. Okay, so that's the source that the shin should just be on the bottom like this and not have a full flapping. Im katav shin shel arba rashim psula, let's say I wrote a four-headed shin, like we know we do have by the the tefillin on the outside, that four-headed shin, but it's not supposed to be in the inside in the writing. So that's פסול, ולא די בגרירת ראש אחת, דהבי חק תוחות, אלא צריך לבטל האוטו להשלימה. Okay, in other words, it's not enough to just erase one head, because that would again be creating the letter through a chak tochot, delo kamarikash. Okay, in other words, the marikash apparently claimed it's a shin, it just has something added to it, so you can erase it. And the other achronim say no, it's a shin tzura, and therefore, by erasing that head, then you're creating the letter. In other words, there's a little break inside the heads, then that you can correct as long as it's read as a shin. אם נגעו איזה מהראשים יותר ממקום דיבוקם, דהיינו שאין עיקר הראש של הקו שווה, פסול ואין תינוק מועיל בזה. Okay, like in this picture, because again, it should have a clear head and then a line descending. But if it doesn't have a head, in other words, it's all the same thickness throughout, that's what the Mishnah Berurah says is pasul. And the tinok doesn't help for that because it's considered the shin tzura. In other words, the shinim have to have a head, on each of these three heads, which is larger than the leg coming down from it. Okay, if the heads of the shin touch each other, then it's pasul. However, here we have a machloket whether you can correct it. Why? So he says, sofrim that you can correct it just by erasing where it's touching. In other words, the question is, if the heads touch each other, is that considered a shinui tzura, change in the shape of leather, or it's just a chisaron of mukaf gvil? If it's a shinui tzura, then erasing it would be considered chak tochot. But if it's the tzura is fine, it's just not the halacha of mukaf gvil, that it has to be surrounded by parchment, then as we learned, you are allowed to erase it, and it's not chak tochot, because I'm not creating the letter, I'm just enabling the mukaf gvil to take place. So he says most poskim say it's just a problem of a mukaf gvil, and that's why it's okay to erase. However, the Mishnah Berurah says, that say it is considered a shinui tzura. In other words, to fix by erasing רק בתפילין ומזוזות אם כתב אחריו דלא מהני ביאור שלו כסדרן. ושאין כן בספר תורה צריך לבטלו מצורת אות ולהשלימו. So he says basically in Sefer Torah that you can correct it properly. So erase a letter until it doesn't have the shape of letter of a shin and then rewrite it. Tefillin umezuzot, that you've written onwards, that you have a problem shelo kesidran, then you can't erase it, and then you can't erase the entire letter. So then you rely on the poskim that it's just mukaf gvil, and you are allowed to fix it by just erasing in between the heads to create the mukaf gvil in between the heads of the shin. The version. Here in the Sfaradim, first of all, in terms of the heads, all of them are like vavim. The left one is not like a zayin; they're all like vavim. It does have like like a floor to it. However, they do make here at the end a pointer. They say here that in all Sifrei Torah, they even didn't have necessarily that pointer. In other words, in the Sfaradi nowadays, they sort of make a pointer here so that the shin will be standing on one leg, somewhat, even though it does seem to have like a flat floor to it, but they do make here a pointer at the end to fulfill what we said. However, they say here at the end, יש שהיו כותבים מושב השין ישר, וכן נמצא בכמה ספרי תורה ישנים, ואם עשה מושב עגול כזה, יש מכשירים להכלילו כחד קרא. In other words, if you make it fully curved, then it's like considered one continuous leg. In other words, if you made the heads of the vavim backwards, then also they say it's kasher, and they say v'yesh. Some would make the middle one, the vav on top, facing the other way, to the right. But nowadays, all do it nowadays. So you see here, again, the different customs. Ashkenazi shin. The Sfard, the Ktav Ari, you see, he has here, instead of a zayin on the upper left, he has a vav, like the Sfaradim. In other words, they're all like a vav. The pointer of the shin is in the middle. In other words, it's not coming flat down like everybody else, but it's coming back more like a menorah to the middle. All right, any questions, comments?
Nope.
Okay, all right, very good. So next time, Bezrat Hashem, we'll try to finish up the letter Taf, and then we'll move on to the next siman.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, of course, everybody.
Go to.